I am Patrick Engwa, Master Trainer with M2TU1 Cameroon. You're all welcome. I will start this session with some quotations which have a direct link with what we are going to discuss in a few minutes. You can tell a good workman by his tools. Pedagogic documents do not make the teacher, but we recognize the good teacher by his documents. If your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. That is by Abraham Maslow. You are welcome to this first training unit, which is exploitation and use of pedagogic documents of the second training module, that is planning of pedagogic activities. In this training unit, we will together identify the different teaching documents that you will need as a mathematics teacher to plan your activities at the start of each school year. Well, as an in-service teacher or a pre-service mathematics teacher, it is obvious that you have already heard about pedagogic documents and that you have an idea about these different documents. This is why at the beginning of this training unit, we appeal to your spirit of leadership, because it is what we think we already know that often prevents us from learning. That is a quotation from Claude Bernard. However, what is learning to be if it is not learning to change? To courageously break within the comfort and conformism where one has installed as at home, you have to come out of your comfort zone in order to make things work. To really learn, we must always learn to unlearn, to break with what blocks us, locks us and alienates us. That is what Olivia Raboul will tell us. Pedagogic documents are for the teacher as plan for the architect or the civil engineer. And so pedagogic documents are just playing that same role for the teachers. Indeed, architectural or engineering plans make it possible to geographically and technically represent a building, a bridge, a project, taking into an account the needs and desires of the client or the customer in order to highlight the characteristics of the project, in order to facilitate its realization. Thus, for a mathematics teacher, the pedagogic documents are the support or some material resources needed to prepare the lessons to be taught in order to guarantee their quality for the success of the learners. To this end, we will ask the following question, for instance. What are these pedagogic documents? What are their role? Why do we first of all use them? And how do we use these documents? How are these documents designed, or where do we obtain them from? Some of these pedagogic documents, which we will be discussing, are intrinsically linked to the teaching methods in progress. This is why, first of all, we are going to present the pedagogic approach in force today, and which recognizes the content of some of these documents. We are going to look at a pedagogical approach in secondary education in Cameroon. The notion of a pedagogical approach is closely linked to that of learning theories. Indeed, a pedagogic approach is the operationalization of one or more learning theories. Learning theories were discussed extensively in the second training unit of the third module. This is why we will limit ourselves here to the presentation of the two following pedagogic approaches. The first one will be the objective-based approach, the OBA, and the second, the competency-based approach, the CBA. The objective-based approach, OBA, originated in the United States in technical education in a socio-economic context of rationalization of industrial production processes in the 1920s. This must adapt man to the needs and values of society and translate them into objectives. Concretely, the objective-based approach consists precisely in defining the expected objectives of a learning sequence and breaking them down into 1. The sub-objectives of knowledge, the know-how, and interpersonal skills that the learner must achieve. And 2. The content related to these sub-objectives. 3. The methods and tools used to achieve the objectives. And lastly, the validation and evaluation of the objectives effectively. The objective-based approach has a set of advantages and limits. The first one we'll talk about regarding the advantages. We can note amongst others. We want to take first part the advantages it has. The first one will be a progression built around the learner's activity. Of course, the second is to represent a guide in pedagogic action. The next one is the precision of the evaluation criteria, which makes it possible to reduce the impact of values. We also have that the objective-based approach, it provides a rational basis for formative assessment, and it equally establishes the foundations for individualized learning. Those are some of the advantages for the objective-based learning. Now, regarding the limits, we can highlight the following. There is a narrow entry by the objectives, which can isolate the behavior from the social context in which it is produced. Then there is the elimination of human values by the illusion of transparency of the clarification of intentions. There is also fragmentation of content, which implies the loss of an overall point of view when we use this approach. Another limitation to this is the learner is subjected to the teacher's objectives, and there is no room for the unexpected because the learner is just at the receiving end. The learner's contribution is limited to performing. He does not take part in the progressive discovery of the contents by following his own reasoning. In the context of the objective-based approach, we focus only on what is observable de facto. What is not observable as the child's brain is seen as black box, which means we want to think that the child has nothing in the head and is what we are giving that is making up what is in the child's head. The fact that it is in this box that all the activity of intellectual processes reside has allowed a new approach to emerge, the competency-based approach. The competency-based approach, CBA, is a response to the concern to find a solution to the problems and limitations identified in the framework of the objective-based approach. The CBA developed from the 1980s in the United States. Its objective is to develop skills in the learner in line with the constructivist and socio-constructivist perspective of learning. A person is competent with the treatment he brings to a situation is viable, that is satisfactory. A person cannot construct a skill out of a situation and then seek to apply it in any situation. The competency-based approach consists of establishing a didactic contract in which the learner is called upon to get involved, to participate in a collaborative effort to achieve new skills. He is invited to share his doubts, to explain his reasoning, to become aware of his ways of understanding, memorizing, and communicating. The teaching practices are carried out as follows. We have the diagnostic assessment for orientation at the beginning of the year. Now we have learning, which will be the sequences aimed at developing soft skills and knowledge. We also have intermediate integration modules having the function of consolidating and remedying the gaps that are noted. And then we have at the end of the year an integration module which is envisaged to reflect the final integration objectives for the year. The competency-based approach is today the pedagogic approach in use in Cameroon schools. The programs are organized on the basis of this approach. This CBA is built around three fundamental notions. The first one is a notion of competence, and then we have of families of situations, and the last one, resources. Now we're going to take a little interest in these three concepts. Now the first one is, what is a competence? A competence refers to an ability to react effectively in any given situation, or ability to mobilize relevant resources to solve a problematic situation. But in a simple way, we could say competence is the ability to provide a solution to a problem. It is an understanding of situations. It is therefore a question of mobilizing knowledge and skills to successfully a given problem. That is what we would term competence. Now, what is a family of situations? A family of situations represents all situations in life with common characteristics. The last one is, what is a resource? A resource represents all the means used or necessary by an individual to overcome a problematic situation. That is, knowledge and skills are cognitive resources. Now, having gone through those approaches, we'll now come to this question: the pedagogic documents necessary for a mathematics teacher. In order to properly organize a school year, you as a mathematics teacher must know and have the following documents. I will just list them. We'll have a breakdown of the school year signed by the authorities, that is MINESEC and MINEDU, the Ministers of Secondary Education and of Basic Education. You need the mathematics syllabus, the official syllabus signed by these authorities as well. You have the individual timetable. You have the textbook for the class as on the book list, and as well as many other textbooks for research. You have the teacher's roadmap for the year. You have the scheme of work and many others. So let us take a close look at each of these documents and examine exactly what they are, where we get them from, or how do we conceive them. We start with the breakdown of the school year, which is co-signed by MINESEC and MINEDU. This is the first document you must have at the start of each school year. Of course, it is a calendar that gives the breakdown of the school year. It indicates different teaching periods, that is the holidays, as well as the start and the end of the academic year. This document is jointly signed by the Ministers of Basic Education, MINEDU, and Minister of Secondary Education, MINESEC. So why must you have this document? For what reasons should you have this document? The breakdown, the school year document, mainly indicates when a school year starts and when it ends. It is in this interval that all your mathematics teaching activities will take place. It constitutes the basic document for the realization of the teacher's roadmap and eventually the outline of the scheme of work. Now, let's look at the mathematics syllabus. The second document you need to have is the official mathematics teaching syllabus. It is a document which allows you to have an overview and a summary of the topics to be covered for all the classes. In addition to these different themes to be covered in each class, this document also specifies the objectives for each team and the teaching method, which means for this document, the syllabus, it will give you the objectives. What are the objectives you have to attain? For instance, for each class, you have to know that there are topics that appear in different classes, and so there will be objectives for topic in each class, so as not to let you go out of what you are supposed to do for a particular class. If you are dealing, for instance, with sets, you might find sets in Form 1 and you find sets in Form 3. So the level of sets, the objectives will be different, and so you will need to take that into consideration. That will be spelled out in the syllabus. You can take, for instance, a topic like matrices, and while doing matrices in Form 3, you have a limitation where you stop, and you continue matrices in Form 4, it has its own objectives. So that will help you to know exactly at what point to start and at what point to end with the topics which are enumerated. With the implementation of the competency-based approach, there is a link between the classroom mathematics and real-life situation. So the official program is proposed by pedagogic inspectors in charge of mathematics and mathematics teachers in collaboration, and validated by the Minister of Secondary Education. The next document we'll be talking about is the individual timetable from the school. In the school organization, the individual timetable plays a role ensuring order. The timetable organizes, it defines the period on service for the teacher while framing the activity of the students. Concretely, the individual timetable is a document that defines the weekly organization of your lessons. It is carried out by the vice principals or dean of studies of the schools in collaboration with the head of department for each discipline. The next one will be the textbooks for the class, as on the book list and other books. Here I will emphasize that it is really imperative for the teacher to have the prescribed textbook, the book the students are having, because it works along with the students. In addition to that, you are supposed to, as a teacher, have other textbooks to do research, which will lead you to other methods and other activities which you could gather in order to present to your students. According to the definition of the dictionary Petit Robert 2003, the textbook is a didactic work presenting in a manageable format the essential notions of a science, a technical, and especially the knowledge required by school curricula. And we say, according to François-Marie Gerard and Xavier Roger, it is a printed tool intentionally structured to be part of a learning process with a view to improving its effectiveness. So all of these are just to improve the teaching learning process. A textbook is therefore a special book that can be used during preparation for mathematics lesson, in the classroom during your lesson, and even afterwards for exercises for the learners. As a mathematics teacher, you can use a specific class textbook in two different ways. One, as a guide in lesson preparation. In this case, it is the textbook that directs and guides your lesson, and to pick up examples, exercises, and sample lessons to work on. The textbook is, in this case, comparable to a bank of resources, allowing you to develop the activities to be done in the classroom. The textbook, in this case, is a support, allowing you to prepare your lessons. Another document we'll have to look at is the official list of textbooks for each class and by subject, which is published at the start of each school year by the Ministry of Secondary Education. As a mathematics teacher, it is important and even necessary to familiarize yourself with it in order to acquire the textbook that you can use with your learners. Now we come to this other aspect, which is the teacher's roadmap for the year. The teacher's roadmap, or the work plan, is a document that breaks down the course program for a particular class. It presents the sequential order of the different topics, the resources required, and the expected results. In practice, a teacher's roadmap provides one, an overview of the full content of the course plan for the class. The next one is a sequential list of learning tasks. You have learning tasks which you have to outline. And another thing that will appear in it is relationship between the content and supporting documents or material. There is the content that you have, and what are the supporting materials that you need in order to transmit this content. Those are the things that you make them appear in that map. The skills expected at the end of each course and at the end of the training, because you have objectives and equally you have skills that you are expecting you get from that training or the program. Then the teaching methods develop the targeted skills. What are the methods you will use to get these skills which you want developed in your learners? And then you have the evaluation material or evaluation methods. The modalities of the differentiation of students' pathway and of time management. So as you have already suspected, the aim of the teacher's roadmap is to organize your work as a teacher. As we have already pointed out to you, without programming, there is a great danger of not having time to finish the program. However, it is important to emphasize that it is only indicative. Indeed, a progression that is too tight, for example, calculated over the whole of the working weeks without taking into account the necessary time for knowledge assessment, imponderables of all the kinds beyond your control, that is like public holidays, youth week, national unity week, orientation week, bilingualism day, international day for mathematics, philosophy day, school outing, and you name the rest. Without this, it will lead you on the outset to broken content, to contract, which means if you are planning your work and you don't take all of this into consideration, you definitely will not be able to manage your roadmap as you had planned. Now that the interest of the pedagogic project has been presented, let's now look at the ingredients and the steps you can follow to draw out a pedagogic project. Yeah, so what are the essential ingredients necessary for the break-up of a teacher's roadmap? So to develop your teacher's roadmap, you will need a breakdown of the school year assigned by MINISEC and MINEDU. You need your mathematics syllabus. You need your individual timetable for the current year. You need a textbook for the class as on the book list and other textbooks. In practice, it is recommended to also have several mathematics books different from those prescribed by the program for comparison, as well as the mathematics standards for previous and following classes in order to specify what must be acquired at the end of the year. That is why saying that for the year before and the year after as well. We will also recommend that you have a computer, a tablet or a smartphone with internet access and with spreadsheet software. That would be a plus for producing collective work, communicable and susceptible adjustment with your colleagues, members of your cluster or your community of practice. If you do not yet have such computer skills for such collaborative work, you should remember that M2TU1 can always organize such training for your clusters because we are here for you. When you have some of this in software, you will easily be able to update them as the years will go by. So that is why we recommend that you have computers, you have some of those gadgets which you can have your work on it, and because when you have it, you can easily readjust them and communicate with your colleagues, because without which you might not be able to communicate. And as we said, if you are lacking some skills in it, M2TU1 is ready to give a hand and to beef up your skills in it. A good dose of courage, patience, and motivation will be an asset, which means patience, motivation will make it really actually work. So what are the steps to follow to draw up the teacher's roadmap? So as you know, there is no such thing as a miracle recipe that is particular way, nor a set of formal steps that you can apply in any circumstance, like a magic cube for all sources. However, here is a set of steps that you can follow. The first step, that is preliminaries. In the first step here is a set of actions that you can take in your teaching team. You first of all have to identify the level, which class are you preparing it for. You browse the entire program or a reference system of the class, or which you wish to draw up a teacher's roadmap, that is particularly the class. Okay, divide the class program into large parts, that is, you have chapters and lessons. If not already done in the syllabus, because you can find the syllabus, some of them are put into topics. You have modules, you have topics, and even lessons. Now, the use of the class textbook can be useful here. You have your class textbook, it can help you at this point. You have number of chapters, pages devoted to each chapter or a part. All of that are involved. You can divide the program by term, for example, for each term, like you have 3 terms. Knowing the previous year's program will allow you to rely on the prerequisites of your class. So you see, when you are like even preparing the lessons, there is a need for prerequisite. If you do not know the program for the previous class, you will not be able to comfortable whether the prerequisite is what the students must have done or not. To make this part easier to complete, consider organizing the different parts in a table. That is, using a spreadsheet will definitely save you so much time. The second step will be breakdown into teachable units. After preliminary breakdown, you can move on to more precise cutting into teachable units. During this step, the actions that you can take are as follows. You identify the essential concepts in the preliminary distribution of fundamental concepts. It is therefore essential to become immersed in the repository to identify the national fields, the skills to be acquired, and so forth. You need to identify the organization of the class into official text. Working in a team or with more experienced colleagues can be particularly useful at this stage. And remember to contact the members of your cluster, and why not even the master trainers when you are drawing up at this stage. The third step will be time management. After the precise breakdown, we must then focus on time management. At this stage, here are the actions you can take. You indicate on the table all holidays, periods or weeks outside of class, that is like youth week and so forth, or local events and planned events that may affect your teaching, like mock examination, traditional festival to your locality. Remember to leave sufficient leeway to take into account possible contingencies, generally 1 or 2 sessions per term, because there could be something that will crop up. So leaving gap for that will actually help. Compare the plan or recommended duration in the benchmark with the actual duration by totaling the possible hours of intervention. And finally, proceed with the effective division of the program. First into large periods, then finding each of these periods. And then you organize the topics chronologically, starting with the first week of the school year. And the fourth step will be the construction of the teacher's roadmap. The division and the time having been taken into account, it is time to move on to the actual construction of the progression. Here are the actions you can take at this step. Integrate assessment into your program. In the syllabus, it is well spelled in when you have to do your assessment. It is important to specify the form, the duration, and frequency of each assessment. That equally you have been given a clue in the syllabus when to do that. Check that you are processing the entire program. Then also efficiently prepare the content of each of your interventions. That is, you have the detail by sequences depending on the progress. It is important to keep in mind that the project is not fixed. Refreshing data and possible opportunities may force you to adapt. There are situations, as we said, they may crop up, and so you might have to adapt. So it should be really have in mind that it is flexible. You have to identify the teaching materials and resources needed for each module and topic. And the fifth step will be adaptation during the year. At the end of the previous step, you will necessarily have a teacher's roadmap. However, a teacher's roadmap can evolve during the year. This is why we suggest the present step to you. Here are the actions you can take for this step. Follow as much as possible the planned progress. That you have to do as much as possible to follow the plan which you have laid down. You monitor its progress throughout the year to catch up with any delays as quickly as possible. And then you adapt it if necessary without losing sight of your main objective to treat the whole program for the success of the students in mathematics. Remember, in all circumstances, the teacher's roadmap is a work guide, is flexible and evolving to be adapted to class. And the sixth step is the next year. Repetition is the mother of science, they say. You guessed it, you have to start over. Not by modifying the dates on the previous pedagogic project or by changing the name of the teacher, but by taking into account the past year and the new data. The duration of certain sessions to be renewed, possible modifications of evaluations, students' difficulties on certain points, updating or renovation of programs to be taken into account. So, as we are saying, you understand, for a next year, you will need to go over it and not just like changing the name and so forth, because many things keep evolving, and so you will have to really have to readapt it to your current year. It will not just be a matter of changing maybe the name or changing the date on it. As a mathematics teacher, you must go beyond the fantasy representation of total control of content, time and space to move to a logic of adjustment and regulation, a posterior of the exercise of designing a teacher's roadmap. Indeed, each school year takes your pedagogic project as a working hypothesis which you will submit to the test of reality. of practice. Then you need to analyze the results in order to learn lessons to regulate your practice, which will improve your future pedagogic projects. To go deeper into this part, I invite you to consult the outline of pedagogic projects available in the course complement of this training unit. Our next pedagogic document is scheme of work. In order to facilitate the effective monitoring of the pedagogic project, we use the scheme of work. It is a document that synthesizes the content of your teacher's roadmap. It presents the teaching plan in the class concerned in weekly session and weekly lesson units for each week. It is also important to specify the evaluation periods for the students. Thanks to the scheme of work, you and your collaborators can assess and evaluate the progress made in the activities planned at the teacher's roadmap level. In conclusion, to improve the teaching and learning of mathematics, it is necessary to plan for it in advance. This is why, as a mathematics teacher concerned with the success of his students, you must identify the resources necessary for this planning, because a good teacher is recognized by the quality of his planning tools. In addition, beyond this identification, you must discern the role of each resource and especially know how to use it. We will continue to say, as you know, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, working together is success. Don't forget to share your ideas and questions in the forum. You can also get to the TTP Community of Practice platform using the link which you have on your screen to discuss with members of your clusters. Alone, we go faster, and together, we always go further. See you very soon in our next training unit.